To hear from Erin Friday. She's a parent of other sister, and she's president of the group Our Duty, which is a parent advocacy group. Erin writes legislation, fights bills, and in her own words, she won't shut up until this hell is over. So delighted to have you here with us, Erin, and over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. And Fika, I just want to add to what you were saying before I launch into what I was intending to talk about. I just received a invitation for a group in Taiwan that is seeing that they're getting their, gender ID laws. They're trying to push that through in Taiwan. This is spreading. It's Korea is also fighting this, and they're trying to stamp this back before they have self-ID laws positioned. But they are watching us from afar, and they see it before we did. We had to react to an unknown, and Asia is watching and seeing what is happening to the United States and to Europe on this, and hopefully trying to stamp it out before these laws pass because they understand it. So kudos to all the work that you're doing, and all the work that these women have been doing for the last year. It's a really heavy journey that we're taking, and it's like rolling the ball up every day and then rolling it back up the next day. So thank you so much. I kind of want to start my presentation with a little story. So there's a man who is walking along a river, and he sees, a woman in distress floating down the river, and he jumps in and he pulls her out and he saves her. And then another person comes down the river and he pulls her out and saves her. And he is doing this time and time again. And it finally dawns on him to walk upstream and to find out why all these people are falling in the river in the first place. And that is the schools. The schools are creating trans-identified kids. We all know about the internet pull for these kids too, but really it's emanating from our schools. And until we can stop really creating, because that's what we're doing, that's what's happening, is we're creating trans-identified kids who would normally grow up to be gay adults or lesbians, or just quirky, funky, gender non-conforming kids, or just sad kids are being created out of our schools. And the onslaught of the schools pushing this just continues. Here I talk a lot about California because we are the tip of the spear, and I live in California, and whatever we do spreads across the United States. And, same with Oregon, Washington, and Colorado. We are really the ones pushing this transgender movement ahead, and the lawmakers in California, they don't really care what Trump has been doing with his executive orders. They just give it all the middle finger and say, we're going to continue doing what we're doing. Go ahead and sue us. And that's the position they're taking. So we're creating more and more of these kids. Wanted to really talk about the case of Mahmoud. I suspect that WDI already talked about the effect of what Mahmoud is. Mahmoud is a Supreme Court case that the Supremes came down on our side of this about teaching gender ideology to kids at school, and getting religious parents to be able to opt their children out of gender identity issues. California, again, is ignoring that Supreme Court decision. And what they're doing is they're allowing opt-outs if you have a sincere religious belief, but those people who don't have religion, their children are still getting a good dose of gender ideology. And in Oregon, they are, they enmesh gender ideology into every one of their classes. That also happens in California. There are, If you look at GLSEN, which is one of the biggest NGOs in the gender blog, um, they uh, they have lessons where they can insert gender into every class. So you can take a calculus class and you can find gender in there. Obviously, language classes, it's really easy when you have gendered nouns, they can talk about gender. And this is kind of a game and it's being used. Oregon actually came out and said that they're doing it, they're interspersing it into every class because then parents can't opt their kids out. It's nearly impossible to opt your kid out of, a dose of gender. Even in the Supreme Court case, in the Mahmoud case, the school district did this on purpose. They had the books about gender, they pop them in at different times so that it's not just one chunk. Like in the United States, you can opt your child out of sex education. That's a 5-day course or a 5-hour course, whatever it is. And so it's very easy to opt your child out. But when you have a dose of gender in science, in math, in Spanish class, it's difficult to opt out. And then the schools will claim we can't opt, this is too disruptive to the administration of the class. Like this is too hard. So we don't have to accommodate even the religious students because it's just too difficult. We don't have our curriculum ready, and it just it comes in. So this is the tricks that they are using. Here in California, we have a case pending right now where they have used fifth graders in a buddy system. They have the fifth graders read the trans books to the kindergartners. And this is another little way to work around Mahmoud, right? Because in Mahmoud, you had the teachers and it was part of the curriculum. Now you have student indoctrinating student. And the fifth graders, they're 11. They don't have the gumption to say no to their teachers. Of course they don't. And the kindergartners and the first graders look up to the fifth graders. And so this is a great ploy, kids indoctrinating kids. It's really, really sneaky and really, really awful. But the silver lining on this, I'm going to give some silver linings because I don't want to be all doom and gloom all the time here in California or here in the United States. And there I see some of my fellow women who have been fighting at school boards here in the chat. But there are school districts now who are starting to wake up to this fact, even those who are center or left. And the way they are waking up to this is the sports issue. So they are understanding that girls are getting harmed when boys are playing against them or in their bathrooms or in their locker rooms. This is kind of the tipping point. This is the easy one for them to understand, that it's not fair for girls to be in boys sports. But at the same time, then you have the California School Board Association sending out new policies. So what the California School Board Association does is it will write a policy, and where they get the language from this policy, I'm suspecting is actually from our government, from the California Department of Education, will encourage them to write a new policy that will push more gender into the schools. What they have been trying to do now is not only make gender identity a privacy issue, but sex a privacy issue, which is absurd. How can you make somebody's sex private? This is another push forward incrementally so that they can say parents have no right to know the sex of their own children. I know this sounds absurd. All of this is absurd, but that's where it is. So you can never ask the sex of someone. You can see how this would work against any sex-based rights when you can't ask the sex of someone? How can you have a sex-based right when you can't get the information about their sex? That takes me to the next piece of what's happening in California. They are sealing records of anybody's gender marker or sex change. It's going to be an automatic sealing of those records. And anyone who reveals those records can be civilly prosecuted, not to a small degree, but to a massive degree. There's an automatic, I believe, $5,000 fine should you reveal those records. Now, we're talking just the records now that are sealed, but that's incremental to where they want to go, which if you reveal the actual sex of anyone, regardless if it's through a record or not, that you're going to be fined. So you see where we're going, where you're not allowed to say what somebody's actual sex is. That's where we're going. Where we are now is this bill is passing. $5,000 for revealing a sealed record. But if they can prove that you have an intent to reveal these records, you did it purposely knowing that they were sealed, you can get punitive damages, which is the sky's the limit. So as we saw with Graham Linehan being arrested in the UK, we are moving rapidly towards that here in the United States, where First Amendment is not going to have any meaning anymore. And they're doing it by these little tiny little bites that most people are not paying attention to. Last week, California gutted a bill. That means the bill was going through, it passed both sides of the legislature. We're right at the end of our legislative season. They gutted the bill. They took out all the language and added all new language. What is that new language? Why, they now have an LGBTQ discrimination coordinator that reports to the governor. What is that? That's the Stasi. That's the person who is going to find out who is having quotes, hate speech. They're building this. They're building it while we are just trying to stamp out every little, the big bills, should I say, the big bills. They're making these little bills, these little inroads, just like FICA was talking about. They put in the word gender, then they put the word gender identity in, and 20 years later, this is where we are. So they're continuing down this road. Another frightening aspect. Here's another thing that's going on, and people all over the nation and in Europe need to be paying attention to this, is they're creating community schools. Now, this sounds like a wonderful idea when you first read it. Community schools, you can drop your child off pre-K. So that 4-year-old, you need to go to the grocery store. Will you sign them up for that free nursery school? Everyone loves free. You are already having the indoctrination starting at 4 years old. Parents don't know. Then these community schools are offering free dental, free mental health, free drug counseling. Schools in the United States don't have enough funding already in many places, and so free is amazing. Well, this is moving us towards where schools replace the family. This is how they get more of their disciples, when they push the parents out, because the parents are the stopgap for the transing of these kids. Community schools, they're sending out these memorandums of understanding with, again, these hooks. And school boards are now looking at them as ways to, quote unquote, help their community, help their low-income students. But behind these community schools are a whole trans mafia. once you find out who the company is that is joining forces with the school. So we're creating more kids. We're creating more men who think that they are women. And it all is stemming from the schools, and the parents are blind to it. And the school boards don't know. But the unions and the NGOs are pushing this relentlessly. Wanted to talk a little bit about legislation, or sorry, the lawsuits that are going on, because again, I want to give some good news. School lawsuits in the United States. There are about 30, maybe 31 school related lawsuits where parents have sued for the secret social transition of their children. So here in the United States, you can send your child to school. The school can change your child's name, adopt new pronouns, allow that child to use wrong sex bathrooms and sports, and the parents are none the wiser. That, of course, happened to me. When I complained, they sent Child Protective Services to my home, of course, using coercion to shut me up. That is what is happening in the United States. So these secret social transition plans get put in place. Parents, maybe by accident, because they do screw up, find out that their daughter is being called a male name at school, and they have been suing. So we have about 31 of those cases all over the nation being filed. Thus far, none of those cases have gotten very far. The judges, the trial court judges, um, kill the cases, dismiss them on technicalities. I mean, the technicalities, I'll just talk about one, is just, they're just absurd. So parents who are afraid their children are going to undergo a secret social transition, they sue. The courts say, no, you don't have standing because you haven't been injured yet. So you have to wait for your child to be injured. So imagine that. Then there are cases where they say the case is moot. That means the issue's over because the parent pulled the child from the offending school. So how do you sue them? Then there's cases that have what is called qualified immunity. Well, the school didn't really know what they were doing was wrong, in layman's terms. And there's some other technical basis that these schools are avoiding adjudicating. The real issue is, do parents have a right to raise their children in their sex? That's the question. This question is getting up to the Supreme Court of the United States. There are currently three cases, and likely a fourth, asking for the Supreme Court to weigh in on this issue. Again, a very simple issue. Do parents have a right to raise their child in their sex? I know that the court will answer that question in the yes. We know this because 3 judges have already signaled that. And just last week, Gorsuch had weighed in on a Supreme Court case, and I think Gorsuch is going to come back to the fold. He's one of the Supreme Court justices who wrote a terrible opinion, but I think he's coming back into the fold. So I'm hopeful that in the next year, we're going to have a very positive result from the Supreme Court in the United States saying parents can raise their children in the sex that they were born, and schools are not allowed to secretly socially transition the kids. That's probably about a year out, but this is very, very positive news. And I think the Supreme Court has been waiting on this one. To pick the perfect case, and I think the perfect case is before them. So this is really beneficial, and this is going to, I think, have an effect hopefully across the world. But I don't know. Maybe I think the United States has more power than power than it does. But that's really beneficial. We also, and in the schools, we have cases where teachers have been filing lawsuits for their religious beliefs that they don't want to be a part of transitioning any child. Those cases are wildly successful. It's insane to me that the teachers have more rights than the parents, that those cases have been winning. Um, Now, they have a religious component to it, and when you have that First Amendment right, that seems to be the trick. But those of us who are not religious, we have to really start filing these lawsuits and protecting those who are not of the religious persuasion. So let me run with that just one more minute. Um, here in California, there was a school board who, now I can't see into people's hearts, so I don't know if one of the things that the school board decided to do was for a good purpose. Um, the school board member who proposed this policy broke down in tears in the middle of the presentation. But what this school board was trying to do was create an avenue for girls to be safe from boys in bathrooms and changing rooms. And what she proposed is that the girls say that they have a mental health issue, and that would give them protections. That's insane. Of course, this was in Temecula. This reached some international news, but it's the reverse, is it not? Gender identity is in the DSM as a mental health issue. And I haven't read yet that women have a mental health issue because we don't want to change in front of a male. But that that is what that school district attempted to do. Um, it got shot down, which is fantastic, but it's emblematic of what these school districts are grappling with because they don't know which way to go. If they follow federal law, they lose state funding. If they follow state law, they lose federal funding. And so they don't understand the law, and they are just sitting here waiting for someone to tell them which way to go. Um, I think a lot of there are some conservative school districts in California that are going to say no to Gavin Newsom and forego, or at least um, challenge the law that has men or boys, being able to choose sports and bathrooms by gender identity. There are currently three lawsuits in California on that issue, but I'm hoping that a school board will actually just say no and change the bathrooms back to be based on sex and let Gavin Newsom sue them. And we're looking for a school board who will be bold enough to do that because we really need these schools to stand up against the machine. And I think there are some that are willing to do so. And there's certainly a lot of student backlash. I see people in the chat here that students have had to walk out at Temecula, and students have had enough of what is happening at their schools. So that is my focus, is really on schools. And I'm going to end with again some good news, because I don't know what's happening in Europe on this and in the rest of the world, but here in the United States, parents are losing custody of their children for not bowing to gender ideologues. Parents who refuse to socially transition their child, call their child a different name, um, or treat the child as another sex, are being investigated by Child Protective Services. Child Protective Services, I mean, they'll put it in writing. I have a document that says it. The reason why this mother doesn't have two of her daughters is because she talked to them about the dangers of gender ideology when her daughter said that she was a boy. That's it. That is her crime. And what the courts are doing is they're sealing those cases. And so nobody knows about them. They put gag orders on those cases. So they happen over and over and over again in silence. I am lucky enough that I changed parties yesterday, but um, the Trump administration, whether you like them or not, I don't really care. Um, but I and a group of attorneys, we wrote a proposed executive order to deal with the weaponization of child protective services against people who believe in biological reality. I submitted it on Friday night at 9 o'clock in California, 9 p.m. Saturday morning, I had an email from the administration. That's how hot and heavy they are to address this issue. I had a meeting 3 days later. So that's the silver lining is this administration, whether you like them or not, again, it doesn't really matter. They are hot and heavy on this issue, and they are going to move forward in destroying gender ideology wherever they can. Um, so that's I want to end on a high note is that DC is really willing to talk to us and listen to us and take our ideas and run with them. We just need to keep helping them, and helping them requires us to be the lawyers, um, us to do the legwork, and us to present packages that they can take because they're overwrought with work, and they're still weeding out people who believe in gender ideology in the administration themselves. So with that, I'm going to end. But with every step forward, we're making a lot of steps forward, and so we just need to keep pushing. We need to keep pushing. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much, Erin. We know in California situation is very complicated. Our sisters from Wolf Women's Liberation Front, they sued the state of California or the prisons department for allowing male inmates in female prisons. So we know the situation there is there. There was this video some days ago in on X about Gavin Newsom saying something that he got the sports issue. We don't know where is that going, but thank you very much for your
Oh,
work, all the work you
I
do.
could talk on that. I mean, I wrote the sports bill here in California, and we were called Nazis
Well,
for presenting the bill.
we
Not
are
I'm just going to jump in because it looks as if possibly um, Amparo's internet is broken. Um, uh, I'm sure she'll come back. Frozen, yes, exactly. Good word, Marianne. Thank you. So she'll come back again in a second. But Erin, can you tell us a little bit more about the sports bill? Because I certainly don't know much about it.
well. Um, I wrote a bill to repeal the law in California that allows boys to, or allows any student to participate in bathrooms or sports based on gender identity, and also defines sex because we don't have a definition of sex in California. And we presented it, and Newsom was silent on it, and it was within a couple weeks of him, admitting to Charlie Kirk that he thought it was deeply unfair for boys to be competing against girls, but he stayed silent, which is what he does. and his henchmen killed the bill, despite, I mean, we had people from all walks of life, a lot of people who are here today on this chat, go to Sacramento and say we're lifelong Democrats, we're lesbians. It didn't matter. They killed the bill at the first committee hearing, and Gavin Newsom stayed silent on it. The only time he speaks about it is when it's safe, when he actually doesn't have to cast a vote. And I think one of the reasons they killed it early on was because he didn't want it to reach his desk.
Yeah, well, that's really interesting. Amparo's back now, so
Sorry.
I'm gonna
It was
jump off now. And
my
so
internet failed.
Erin's been telling us about the bill, the sports bill. So just updating us on that. So I'm gonna
Okay.
jump off again.
Sorry, sisters. It was internet was down. This is also universal, same as gender identity. These internet failures happen everywhere. So thank you very much, Erin, for your participation today.